My office overlooks the Seattle skyline, a panorama of glass and steel reflecting the often gray Pacific Northwest light. 40 floors below, the city hums with the energy of innovation, commerce, the relentless push towards the future. A future my company, Helios Dynamics, is actively shaping. Here, surrounded by clean lines, quiet efficiency, and data streams projecting global energy trends, I am Dr. Lena Petrova, founder and CEO, architect of next generation battery technology, leader of a multi billion dollar renewable energy powerhouse. But down there, in the sprawling Tudor style house in Medina, where my parents, Dmitri and Elena Petrova, still reside, I am simply Lena, the disappointing older daughter, the one who inexplicably dropped out of a promising physics PhD program at the University of Washington 10 years ago to chase some unrealistic tech fantasy. The quiet, slightly awkward counterpoint to my younger brother, Mark Petrova, the golden boy, the one who followed the correct path, MBA, sharp suits, and now a coveted position high up in the old money establishment of Bellweather Industries. Which is why the ostentatious wedding invitation currently sitting on my minimalist glass desk feels less like a joyful announcement and more like a subpoena for a performance I no longer wish to give. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Bellweather request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Sophia Ann, to Mr. Mark Dmitri Petrova. Thick cardstock, offensively swirly gold calligraphy, the whole 9 yards. Mark, my perpetually praised brother, marrying into the Bellweather dynasty, controllers of the slightly rusting but still influential Bellweather Industries, a regional giant in traditional manufacturing, desperately trying and mostly failing to pivot into the green energy sector. My mother, Elena, had been ecstatic, naturally. Her phone calls for the past few months had been relentless litanies of floral arrangements, guest list politics, and breathless pronouncements about securing the family's future through this brilliant alliance. Think of the connections, Lena, she'd gushed. Arthur Bellweather himself. This is exactly the kind of stability Mark needs. Perhaps some of their good fortune will finally rub off. The unspoken addendum hung heavy in the air. Unlike your reckless gamble, they have no idea. None of them. They have no clue that LP Holdings, the discrete entity Bellweather Industries has been negotiating with for months, the one holding the key to their desperately needed $50 million contract for advanced energy storage components essential for their new electric vehicle division, is Helios Dynamics. And the elusive head of LP Holdings, the one who communicates only through senior executives and whose name rarely appears on documents? That's me, Lena Petrova, the PhD dropout. It wasn't deliberate deception, not initially. When I founded Helios Dynamics in my cramped graduate student apartment, fueled by breakthroughs in material science and a burning desire to build something real rather than just theoretical, I needed focus, not family drama. I used LP Holdings, kept my CEO title internal, and let my brilliant mentor and early investor, my uncle Mikhail, be the public face. It shielded me from the inevitable skepticism, a young woman, dropped out of physics, running a renewable energy company, and, more importantly, from my family's well-meaning but utterly destructive attempts to guide me towards something sensible. The distance became a habit, a necessary buffer zone. They think I do some kind of vague tech consulting, working remotely, making a decent living. They have no concept of the scale, the impact, the sheer relentless drive that built Helios from a garage startup into a global player. My assistant, Ben Carter, buzzed through on the intercom, his voice calm as always. Dr. Petrova, the final red lines on the Bellweather Industries semiconductor energy storage contract just came through from their legal team. They're pushing for signature by end of week. Acknowledged, Ben, I replied. File them, we'll review Monday. The timing was almost poetic. The contract that could potentially save Bellweather Industries, run by my future father-in-law, brother-in-law, Arthur Bellweather, sitting on my desk alongside the invitation to the wedding, designed to celebrate my brother marrying into that same precarious dynasty. My phone rang. Caller ID, Mom. I braced myself and answered. Lena, darling. Elena's voice chirped, falsely bright. You received the invitation, yes? Isn't it magnificent? Sophia Bellweather is such a lovely girl, perfect for our Mark. It arrived, Mom. Very good gold. Now, Lena, about the wedding, she plunged ahead. It's this Saturday. Black tie optional, but really, darling, aim for black tie. The Bellwethers, their friends, it's important to make a good impression. No, she paused pointedly. No hoodies, or those strange tech t shirts you favor. Perhaps that nice silk dress you wore to Cousin Anya's wedding? And do something with your hair. I rolled my eyes internally. I'll find something appropriate, Mom. Good. And Lena. Her voice dropped slightly, taking on a conspiratorial tone. This is a real opportunity for you, too. So many successful, eligible men will be there. Mr. Bellweather has connections everywhere. Try to mingle, smile a little. You never know. So my brother's wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was apparently my last chance saloon for finding a suitable husband approved by the Petrova Bellweather Social Committee. The absurdity of it. Me, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, being advised to network for a date at my brother's wedding, almost made me laugh. Almost. I'll be there to celebrate Mark and Sophia, Mom, I said evenly. That's the focus. Of course, darling, of course, and she agreed quickly, sensing my lack of enthusiasm. Just try to fit in, won't you? For Mark's sake, for the family. Click. I stared at the dead phone. Try to fit in, the story of my life. For years I had tried to fit their mold, tried to earn their approval, tried to make my divergent path somehow acceptable in their eyes. It never worked. My successes were minimized, my struggles magnified, my very existence often treated as an inconvenient deviation from the family narrative starring Mark, the successful son. A part of me, the weary part, wanted to skip the wedding entirely, send a polite, expensive gift, and plead a last-minute work emergency. Avoid the inevitable comparisons, the condescending questions, the feeling of being judged and found wanting yet again. But another part, the part fueled by a decade of quiet resentment and stifled ambition, felt a different urge, a colder, sharper desire. They wanted me to attend, to witness Mark's triumph, his merging with the powerful Bellweather name. Fine, I would attend. I would play the part of Lena Petrova, the slightly awkward, underachieving older sister. I would smile politely, and I would hold my secrets close. The knowledge of Bellwether's precarious finances, the power I wielded over their future via Helios and LP Holdings, the fact that the disappointing daughter held the fate of the brilliant alliance entirely in her hands. I confirmed my attendance via the online RSVP, using my personal email, offering no hint of my professional identity. I packed a simple, elegant black sheath dress, understated designer, the kind whose quality whispered rather than shouted, a language my mother understood even if she wouldn't recognize the label. I booked my flight back to Seattle. The stage was set. Let the family reunion commence. They had no idea the guest of honor they were ignoring held the power to rewrite the entire play. The wedding ceremony, held in a historic downtown Seattle cathedral dripping with old-world grandeur and an excessive amount of white roses, was precisely the kind of ostentatious affair I expected. 500 guests, at least. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting rainbows across the polished marble aisle. A string quartet played Vivaldi with professional ennui. Sophia Bellweather looked ethereal in a cloud of designer lace, every inch the perfect society bride. My brother Mark beamed beside her, radiating the smug confidence of a man who believed he had finally, truly arrived. I watched from a discreet pew near the back, feeling like an anthropologist observing a tribal ritual I didn't quite belong to. My simple black sheath dress, though likely costing more than Mark's first car, felt blessedly invisible amidst the sea of pastel silks and bespoke suits. I endured the lengthy ceremony with polite detachment, my mind occasionally drifting to the complex energy storage equations still waiting on my laptop back at the hotel. As the crowd flowed out of the cathedral towards the adjacent Grand Hotel ballroom for the reception, I caught sight of my mother, Elena, holding court near the entrance, air-kissing acquaintances. She spotted me, her eyes doing a quick, critical scan of my appearance before she waved me over with forced enthusiasm. Lena, darling, you actually look quite presentable, she exclaimed, loud enough for several nearby Bellweather relatives to overhear. It wasn't a compliment. It was a backhanded expression of surprise that I hadn't shown up in jeans and one of my strange tech t-shirts. Now remember, she lowered her voice conspiratorially, gripping my arm. Arthur Bellweather is over there talking with your father. Try to be charming. Make a good impression for Mark's sake. I'll do my best not to discuss quantum physics, Mom, I replied dryly, gently extracting my arm. My father, Dmitri, deep in conversation with the imposing Arthur Bellweather, patriarch of Bellweather Industries and now my brother's father-in-law, offered me only a cursory nod as I passed. Their conversation seemed intense, likely revolving around the massive semiconductor energy storage contract currently sitting on my desk back at Helios Dynamics, the deal Arthur believed was being finalized with LP Holdings, the deal he desperately needed to prop up his struggling, antiquated manufacturing empire. If only they knew LP Holdings was the quiet, overlooked daughter currently interrupting their important business talk. The irony was a constant, bitter hum beneath the surface of the day's forced pleasantries. The ballroom was even more excessively decorated than the church. Towering floral arrangements, gold-rimmed everything, an ice sculpture glistening under spotlights, a champagne fountain bubbling merrily. I navigated the crowded room, searching for the seating chart, a large calligraphed monstrosity displayed on a gilded easel. I scanned the table numbers, the meticulously listed names. Petrova, Mark, Sophia, Elena, Dmitri at table 1. Naturally, right beside the Bellwethers. Other relatives scattered nearby. But my name? Lena Petrova? Nowhere. Not on table 1, not on table 15, not even on the distant table 28 near the service exit. My name wasn't on the chart. A cold knot tightened in my chest, familiar but sharper this time. An oversight? Or something more deliberate? Looking for something? Sophia Bellwether's voice, saccharine sweet, came from behind me. She had changed into her reception gown, a slinky, diamond-encrusted number that probably cost more than my first year's R&D budget. She radiated triumphant bridal bliss. My seat, I said simply, keeping my voice neutral. My name doesn't seem to be on the chart. Sophia feigned a delicate gasp, placing a perfectly manicured hand on her chest. Oh, Lena. Goodness, didn't anyone tell you? Her eyes, however, held a gleam of malicious satisfaction. We had such an overwhelming response, especially with Daddy's important business associates and Mark's partners needing prime placement. We had to get creative with some of the family overflow. She gestured vaguely with her champagne flute towards a heavy, swinging door partially concealed by a large floral arrangement. The kitchen staff set up a perfectly lovely little table back there, much quieter, really, more intimate. She smiled brightly. You know, near where the help usually takes their breaks. I heard it then, a distinct snicker from one of the sharply dressed guests standing nearby who had clearly overheard. The blood rushed to my face, hot and stinging. The kitchen. They were seating me in the kitchen. Mark appeared at Sophia's side then, looping his arm possessively around her waist, a champagne flute already in his hand. Hey, Lena, he said, his tone attempting casualness but failing. Soph told you about the seating tweak? Don't make a scene, okay? It's just a table. You've always been good at, he smirked. Knowing your place, being practical. Knowing my place. 10 years. 10 years of being the family disappointment. The PhD dropout chasing tech pipe dreams while he played the dutiful corporate son. 10 years of quiet dismissal. Of backhanded compliments. Of having my achievements ignored while his every minor promotion was celebrated. 10 years of being the practical one expected to understand, to accommodate, to fade into the background. All culminating in this, being relegated to the kitchen at my own brother's wedding, deemed unworthy of sitting with the distinguished guests whose crumbling company my company was currently negotiating to save. Something inside me, something I had kept carefully contained for years, finally snapped. Not with loud fury, but with a sudden, icy calm. The hurt vanished, replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like a physical sensation. I looked from Mark's smug face to Sophia's triumphant one. I even managed a small, tight smile. Of course, Mark, I said softly, my voice surprisingly steady. Wouldn't want to make a scene. The kitchen sounds cozy. I paused. Excuse me for just one moment. Need to make a quick call before dinner service starts. I turned away before they could respond, walking calmly towards a relatively quiet alcove near the restrooms. I pulled out my secure work phone, not my personal one. My fingers were steady as I dialed Ben Carter, my sharp, efficient chief operating officer back at Helios/LP Holdings. He picked up on the first ring. Dr. Petrova? Ben, I said, keeping my voice low, professional, level. I glanced across the ballroom, catching Mark's eye. I held his gaze as I spoke. Regarding the Bellweather Industries contract, cancel it. Cancel? Ben sounded momentarily surprised. But Dr. Petrova, the final signatures were scheduled for... Effective immediately, Ben, I interrupted coolly. Terminate the negotiation. Withdraw the offer. Cite. Unforeseen changes in market conditions rendering the proposed partnership untenable. Send formal notification via legal counsel within the hour. Understood, Doctor. Petrova, Ben replied instantly, no further questions asked. He knew my tone. Consider it done. Thank you, Ben. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my purse. I took a deep breath, the air feeling suddenly lighter, cleaner. Then I turned and walked back towards the main ballroom, towards my brother and his bride, who were now greeting another set of guests, oblivious. Mark glanced my way, a flicker of confusion perhaps at my brief call, but mostly just impatience, likely assuming I was now heading obediently towards my designated kitchen table. Sophia didn't even look at me. I paused near the entrance to the kitchen, where a waiter was emerging with a tray of appetizers. He offered me one. I politely declined. Then, instead of going into the kitchen, I turned back towards the ballroom, towards the head table, towards my family. The performance was over. It was time to change the script. Clutching my phone, the echo of Ben Carter's calm, "Consider it done," still resonating in my ear, I turned away from the service alcove. The background chatter of the wedding reception seemed distant, muffled, like listening through thick glass. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear, but with a cold, exhilarating surge of adrenaline. The decision was made. The contract was canceled. The carefully constructed facade of the Petrova-Bellweather alliance was about to crumble. Instead of retreating to the kitchen table they had designated for me, I walked calmly, deliberately towards the head table. Mark and Sophia were laughing at something Arthur Bellweather had said. My parents, Elena and Dmitri, beamed proudly beside them. They all looked up as I approached, their expressions shifting. Surprise, annoyance, from Mark and Sophia. Confusion, from my parents and Mr. Bellweather. Lost your way to the kitchen, Lena? Mark asked, his tone laced with the familiar, condescending amusement. Sophia giggled beside him. I ignored them, addressing Arthur Bellweather directly, my voice polite but carrying clearly in a momentary lull in conversation. Mr. Bellweather, apologies for the interruption. There seems to have been a slight misunderstanding regarding my seating arrangement, but perhaps that's fortuitous. There's a more pressing matter concerning the energy storage contract your team was finalizing with LP Holdings. Arthur Bellweather frowned, lowering his champagne glass. LP Holdings? A vital contract, yes. Our teams are finalizing signatures next week. But what, may I ask, does that have to do with you, Miss Petrova? Everything, Mr. Bellweather. I replied calmly, meeting his gaze. LP Holdings is the primary investment and negotiation entity for Helios Dynamics. I paused, letting the name sink in, watching for flickers of recognition amongst the business-savvy guests nearby. And I am Dr. Lena Petrova, founder and CEO of Helios Dynamics Silence. Not the awkward silence of earlier, but a stunned, absolute vacuum. Jaws literally dropped. Mark stared at me as if I'd sprouted wings. Sophia's perfectly painted smile froze, then cracked. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her pearls. My father looked utterly bewildered. Arthur Bellweather's eyes narrowed, searching his memory. Helios Dynamics? He repeated slowly. The renewable tech firm? LP Holdings? SP Holdings. Correction. Use LP Holdings consistently. LP Holdings. That was the holding company initial on the term sheets, but the CEO. Operates discreetly, I finished for him. My uncle Mikhail often handles public-facing duties, but the technology, the patents, the company itself, they're mine. Before the full implication could register, I continued, glancing briefly at my phone as if checking a time-sensitive alert. And unfortunately, Mr. Bellweather, due to unforeseen circumstances that arose this evening, specifically a reassessment prompted by certain interpersonal interactions impacting my confidence in future collaboration, I instructed my chief operating officer just moments ago to formally withdraw the offer and terminate the contract negotiations with Bellweather Industries, effective immediately. Withdraw? Arthur Bellweather surged to his feet, his face flushing dangerously red. Impossible! That contract is vital. We have commitments. You can't just. I assure you I can. I interrupted softly, my voice cutting through his bluster. Helios Dynamics has concerns about Bellweather Industries' current financial stability, frankly. Our due diligence revealed significant unreported debt, 3 consecutive failed product launches in related sectors, and considerable instability in your supply chain. I paused, letting the information land. In fact, LP Holdings has recently acquired controlling interest in 2 of your primary component suppliers. We also hold a significant portion of Bellweather Industries' outstanding corporate debt, purchased quietly on the secondary market over the past 6 months. The color drained from Arthur Bellweather's face. He stumbled back slightly, gripping the back of his chair. He understood. His company wasn't negotiating from a position of strength. They were negotiating with their primary creditor and supplier, who had just pulled the plug. What? What are you talking about? Mark stammered, looking desperately between me and Arthur Bellweather. Dad Bellweather, is this true? Arthur didn't answer, just stared at me, his expression a mixture of fury and dawning horror. Furthermore, I continued, my gaze shifting to my brother, our internal audits, necessary before finalizing any major partnership, raised serious questions about financial controls within the department you oversee at Bellweather, Mark. Significant budget overruns, questionable expense reports, performance metrics that don't quite align. Let's just say your management style lacks a certain rigor. I wasn't accusing him of embezzlement outright, not here, not now, though my audits had revealed deeply troubling patterns. But the implication of incompetence was clear. Sophia whirled on Mark. What is she talking about? Daddy? Is the company really the perfect wedding? The secure future was visibly dissolving before her eyes. My parents looked horrified, finally grasping the scale of the reality I inhabited, the one they had dismissed as a tech fantasy. Guests were whispering openly now, phones held up discreetly, capturing the implosion of 2 prominent families. Please, Arthur Bellweather said finally, his voice hoarse. Dr. Petrova, Lena, we can fix this. A misunderstanding. Let's talk privately. A board seat for you at Bellweather? Full partnership? Mark nodded eagerly. Yes, Lena, partnership. Like we always should have been. I almost laughed. Partnership? I looked from Arthur Bellweather's desperate face to my brother's suddenly hopeful one. Gentlemen, given Bellweather Industries' current leverage ratio, the debt now held by LP Holdings, and our control over your critical supply chain, partnership is not the term I would use. I paused, letting the finality settle. It's far more likely Helios will be discussing terms for acquisition and restructuring in the coming weeks. I looked directly at Mark. And based on performance, Mark, I wouldn't hold my breath for a board seat. Victoria Sophia sank into her chair, tears finally breaching her perfect makeup, her dress looking suddenly like a costume for a play that had ended disastrously. My mother stepped forward, her hands fluttering nervously. Lena, darling, please, think about what you're doing. We're your family. No, Mother, I said quietly, the last vestiges of old hurt replaced by a clean, cold certainty. You are the people who told me success only mattered if it came with the right labels and society connections. You taught me that family support was conditional on fitting your mold. I straightened my simple black dress. Thank you for the lesson. It made building my empire in secret, on my own terms, infinitely more satisfying. I turned to leave. Sarah Lena, James Mark called out, desperation making his voice crack. Don't do this. We can work something out. Anything. I paused at the edge of the ballroom, near the kitchen doors where they had intended me to sit. I turned back slightly, offering them all one last cool smile. Actually, Mark, I said softly, echoing Sophia's earlier sneer, the kitchen staff really does have a lovely table set up back there. Perhaps more suitable for a family discussing downsizing. Then I walked away, leaving the stunned silence, the choked sobs, the frantic whispers, and the complete wreckage of their carefully constructed world behind me. My driver, Mike, was waiting outside, holding the door of my understated Tesla. Everything okay, doctor? Petrova? He asked calmly. I looked back one last time at the opulent venue, the scene of my final, quiet emancipation. Everything's perfect, Mike, I said, sliding into the back seat. Let's head back to the office. We have a company to potentially acquire. The following months were, as expected, intense. Bellweather Industries facing insurmountable debt and supply chain disruption, orchestrated by Helios LP Holdings, had little choice but to agree to a restructuring acquisition. Helios absorbed their viable renewable energy assets and patents, discarding the outdated manufacturing divisions and bloated management, including Mark Petrova. He was, I heard, unemployed, living back at home. Sophia Bellweather, unsurprisingly, had the marriage annulled swiftly, unwilling to be tied to a fallen dynasty and a jobless husband. My parents attempted communication, leaving tearful, rambling voicemails filled with regret and pleas for understanding. I didn't respond directly. Instead, months later, after the Bellweather restructuring was complete, my mother showed up unannounced at the Helios Dynamics headquarters. She looked older, smaller, stripped of her usual commanding presence as she sat hesitantly in my large office overlooking the city. The receptionist didn't recognize me, she whispered, clutching her handbag. I had to show ID to prove I was your mother. Security protocols, I replied neutrally, offering her water, which she accepted with trembling hands. Lena, she began, tears welling. Your father and we've done a lot of thinking about how we treated you. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. She looked around my office at the evidence of my success. We thought success looked like Mark, like the Bellwethers. We didn't understand this. She gestured vaguely. What you were building, we're so proud of you now, Lena, even if we don't deserve to be. I listened quietly. The apology felt late, insufficient, but perhaps finally, sincere. Pride is easy when success is visible, Mother, I said calmly. Would you have been proud when I was working out of a garage, barely making payroll? She flinched, then nodded slowly. No, she admitted softly. We wouldn't have been, and that is our shame to carry. She eventually asked hesitantly if there was anything they could do, any way to help them now. I didn't offer money. Instead, I pushed a brochure across my desk. This is Helios's small business incubator program, I explained. We provide seed funding and mentorship for promising local startups, particularly those focused on sustainable practices. The application process is rigorous. No guarantees, no special treatment. I met her eyes. If you and Dad are serious about building something real, something based on hard work and value, not connections, then you can apply, like everyone else. She stared at the brochure, then at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. This wasn't a handout, it was an opportunity offered on my terms. Thank you, Lena, she whispered, clutching the brochure like a lifeline, for the opportunity and for the lesson. After she left, I stood at the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The best revenge I realized wasn't making them crumble, it was forcing them finally to see the world, and me, as it truly was. I didn't need their approval anymore, but Watching them grapple with the reality I'd built, the reality they had dismissed for so long, that held its own quiet, satisfying vindication.